Hi there, I'm Jan Potgieter, founder of JPA Limited, where we equip the new generation of global business negotiators with the skills and the tools that they need to move their negotiation results to a truly elite level. Today, I want to share with you 3 mistakes that I see that get made so often in the context of negotiations. And I'm hoping that you don't make these mistakes. But let's take a look at what they are. So the first mistake is to think of negotiation as an event rather than a process, right? So many people think that negotiation only takes place when you sit around the table and you're discussing the formal contract. This is not the case, right? Negotiation starts the first time you interact with somebody, because then you have the opportunity to manage their expectations for what's going to follow, right? It's the law of first impressions. Whatever happens first is going to have an impact on that which follows. So don't make the mistake of thinking that negotiation only takes place when he's sitting across the table from somebody, or when somebody has said, now the official negotiation process has started. Negotiation really starts the first time you talk to somebody. People's reality is dependent on their perception. So what this means is that whatever you communicate has nothing to do with your intent. The quality of your communication really is measured by how you're understood by your counterpart, right? So what this means is that their perception of what you say is what's going to determine their reality. Think about it. If you've been in a relationship for longer than 2 weeks, this will have happened to you. You will have said, honey, that's not what I meant, right? People don't care what you mean. What they care about is their perception of what you're bringing across. So this means that if you want to communicate effectively, if you want to negotiate accurately and effectively, what your needs are, what you're prepared to give, what you want to receive, it means that you have to control the perception of what's going on. And this means that you can't think about negotiation as a single event that takes place. You have to manage the perception throughout. So from the first contact, right throughout. And it's a circular thing. You never stop negotiating, because you negotiate not only when you make the deal, you negotiate when you manage the deal, and you will be negotiating when you have to mend the deal, right? So you're always negotiating. So stop thinking about negotiation as something that's an event. Don't make that mistake. Second mistake people make is that they really negotiate as a consequence of default rather than design, right? So we know that your negotiation behavior is really influenced by your preferences, right? So most people's behavior, everyone's behavior really, is mostly influenced by their preference, not by their competence. Let me explain. If your behavior was significantly influenced by your competence, or was a result of your competence, then nobody would exceed the speed limit. We'd all brush our teeth and floss twice a day. I'm often reminded by my son that I have to both brush and floss also at night, not just in the morning. We'd all go to the gym for at least half an hour's exercise 3 times a week. We'd eat 5 fruits and vegetables every day. These are the things the experts tell us to do, and it's well within our capability to do those things. But what you end up eating, what you end up doing, how you end up driving is a consequence of your preference more so than a consequence of your competence. And the same thing is true in the way that you negotiate. Often people think that they're experienced negotiators, but what they really have done is they've done the same thing for 20 years, right? They've not done something new, they've stopped learning, they're not teachable anymore. That's not really negotiation experience, that's just doing the same thing for 20 years, right? That's classic negotiation by default. Negotiation by design means that you need to consider the specific requirements of each situation, and then you have to adjust your approach, right? How do you know that you learn? So we know, by the way, probably the number one shared characteristic of all people who are successful negotiators is the fact that they're teachable, right? And so if you're teachable, normally that's reflected through humility. The way that you know that you learn is that you sometimes get things wrong, right? That which you think that you've mastered, that which you think you're good at, you will never master. Because the minute you think you're good at something, now you stop investing in the development of your skills in that area. So unfortunately, the development of any new skill will make you feel uncomfortable, will make you feel somewhat humble sometimes. So if you've not gone through an experience recently where you've learned something, where you felt uncomfortable, where you've been way out of your comfort zone, here's the bad news. Probably you're negotiating as a result by default, not by design. If you're not uncomfortable, if you're not pushing the boat out there, doing something new, doing something different, I suspect that you're not bringing design to your negotiations, and your results will be suboptimal as a consequence. So I hope you're not making that mistake. Here's the third mistake that I see so many people make, so many organizations make, and I wish for you to not make this mistake. And that's the mistake of being inconsistent in the way that they prepare for their negotiations. Now, basic management theory states that it's impossible for you to improve anything unless you measure it. Like, think about Usain Bolt, Mr. 100-meter world champion. Fantastic athlete he is, isn't it? But he doesn't go around training by gut feel, right? He doesn't work with his coach and he runs one day and he says, you know what, today, well, that felt really fast. No, they measure it. They look at the time it takes him to complete whatever training he's doing, and that's how they measure whether he's getting better or not. Now, often when I ask businesses to supply me with the proof as to why they think they negotiate well or why they think they don't negotiate well, they're not able to show me the proof. Often on the buy side, people will say, yes, but we spent less money this year than we did the previous year, so therefore that's evidence of our negotiation getting better. It's not necessarily the case, right? There can be so many different things that can influence the amount of money that you spend year on year that are not related to negotiation, right? Market fluctuations or businesses going under, whatever it might be. Unless you have a consistent way of approaching your negotiation, unless you have a checklist, unless you have a standardized way that you approach every negotiation, you have no basis for comparison. You have no measure, right? So you shouldn't expect that you're going to get better at negotiation if you don't have any consistency to the way that you prepare and engage in negotiations. So it's a big mistake that's really easy to make. You have to bring consistency to the way that you prepare for your negotiations, right? There's no point in approaching every negotiation differently or to fly by the seat of your pants, because what's going to happen is you're not going to get better at it. You need to bring structure to the way that you approach your negotiations. You need to have some kind of checklist. So hopefully you're not making those 3 mistakes. Maybe you've made 1 or 2 of those, and this has given you an insight to help you to stop making those mistakes. If you have been making all 3 of those mistakes, well, there's really only good news. Your negotiation has lots of room for improvement. Hopefully this has helped you. Here's to your continued success.